Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi, and today we have another team report from the Sacramento Regional Championships, and I am joined by another top player. I am joined by Caelan. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Audie?
I'm doing well. And yeah, so for those who don't know you, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am a relatively newer player. I started playing during the start of Scarlet and Violet, like actually competitively, seriously. That was my first full season. And I qualified for Worlds that year. I got like a couple reasonable results. I think my most notable was I went 9-0 at Fresno on day one and then ended up getting top eight in that event. I didn't play a lot last year just because of my work schedule, but I'm working really hard to compete again this season. I really want to qualify for Worlds again. I was sad that I didn't get to play last year, watching all my friends do that. So yeah, I've been working really hard this season, and it's going pretty well. I think I'm like fifth in points in NA right now. So
Yeah, that I'd call that pretty well. Um, and then something in the water in Northern California for you, coming off that Fresno top cut, getting top eight at Sacramento Regionals.
yeah, I think it's just the West Coast for me. I get the sleep in buff, and it goes better.
Yeah. Well, so you use a team that is, I mean, I'm not going to call it too out there, right? But it
It
is
looks
some,
pretty boring.
yeah. But it's something that we haven't seen a lot of recently in this format. We hadn't saw,
Yeah.
Instant Amoonguss tour teams have really fallen off. Tell me about why you chose to use this team and how you built this team.
Yeah, so I've been working on this team for all of Regulation H. Um, have been building with one of my best friends, Scott Iwafuchi, who's like one of the best players in the world right now. And he hasn't been able to compete, but I've been uh, competing for him, I guess, using our child of a team. So this team originally started with the concept of just the balanced core of Incin, Amoonguss, Goldengo, Hydreigon. And those four are really, really, really good together, and we really like how they work. And the last two slots were kind of filler for a long time, and we just threw a bunch of stuff together. So at the very beginning of Reg H, basically we were like, this team, the two things that these four really struggle with is balance King Gambit and Mouse Ape. And so Dozo was pretty good into both of those, so we just kind of slapped that on there. And I took that to Baltimore, and I also competed in the first GC, and I managed to get top 32 in the first GC with this iteration of the team. Um, but I didn't feel like Dozo was right. I almost never came. Tatsugiri literally never came. It came against Mouse Ape, and that was it. And otherwise, it was just a 5-mon team, and I was using Solo Dozo, and it was okay, but it didn't feel right. And I really wanted to get away from being the Dozo guy because that's kind of been my thing, and I don't want to be carried anymore, you know.
Mhm.
So I messed around with a few ideas, and one of the things we came to was Terrifighting P2 is really, really good in this format. It's great into the Gambit stuff, and then Chomp is just like overall a really good piece that fits well with it. And so we switched to that like 2 months ago, and from then it's just been like really tiny tweaks. But otherwise, this has been pretty much the team since then, and I've just been honing it and getting really comfortable with the team. I used a version of this with Life Orb Chomp, um, and Dragon Claw, and like the normal Chomp set in GC2, and I also got top 32 in that with this version of the team. And then at Sacramento, I basically the only tweak going into that was the loaded dice on Chomp, and then a couple Terra type shifts, and it went really well.
Yeah. It's interesting that you started out with the goggles Hydreigon. That when I looked at the team when you were on stream, I was like, okay, this is a really good Pokemon into the some teams that have been popping up. But it wouldn't be my first choice. Why did you like? Why was that the starting point for your team?
This Hydreigon set has really been like the core of the team. Like the identity of the team is really in this Hydreigon. And it's been exactly this, like minus a little bit of the EV spreads the whole time. I think it actually started as Terra Poison, sorry, but like it's pretty minute. Um, it's just the BS destroyer. this Hydreigon is so good into all of the weird stuff running around that has been running around all season. Uh, all of the Psy spam stuff, all of the sun stuff, all of like it's really good into rain. You just spam snarl. You having the goggles is great for the Amoongus partners. So like it's just held up for the whole format, and it's continuously like shifting what it's good into. And I feel like that's this whole team. This team really feels uh like meta agnostic. Like it doesn't fit into the meta, and I don't really care about what the meta is doing because this team is just playing itself, and it's doing its own thing, and it's not really like none of it is really a call for the meta aside from like maybe some Terra type shifts. But
Mhm.
yeah, this Hydreigon has been amazing at just shutting down all of the random stuff that I see. Um, I think what was it, Louisville, where there was like all of the crazy like Psy spam sun stuff, the Executor stuff. It just like it's like a one mon matchup check for all of those. It like they just can't do anything against this Hydreigon set. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's
I
probably my favorite mon to use in this format.
I can see it. It definitely is really good into a lot of the jankier teams out there. Like you said, Rain too. I think that was the one of the standout matchups for it when I was using Hydreigon back in GC1 as well. So no,
Yep.
I totally buy it. And so yeah, so talk me through the individual Pokemon on the team and why you chose to train them the way that you did.
Sure. So we'll start with probably the star of the team being P2. This guy, I think, I mean, obviously this is a Goldengo team, right? Like that's the identity of the team is it's just like a Goldengo balance team, and that's always what this will be. But I think P2 was close to having the second most knockouts in the whole tournament. Um, it we trained it to be really offensive, specifically for our King Gambit issue. So getting the special attack boost against King Gambit, which happens like almost always, unless you are running a crazy amount of special defense and being like over indexing on Porygon 2. Um, at +1, Terra Fighting Terra Blast guaranteed kills Terra Dark King Gambit. And that was really important for that matchup. And so everything else kind of went secondary with the spreads for that. It's always been terrifying on this P2. It's just like the coverage in this format is phenomenal. It's great into Blood Moon. It's great into Gambit. Um, and the pinning between different Terra types different like defensive Terras with Ice Beam is just really good. The set has never changed, and the spread is great. I mean, P2 is already a defensive beast, so if you just throw max HP on that, you almost don't need anything else. And so, like honestly, they're like you could probably run some speed on this P2 if you wanted to. We're running modest so that I can outspeed most Gambit. But otherwise, it's like not that. There's not much to it. It lives the stuff that it needs to, and then it hits really hard. If you have the special attack boost, this thing is like doing 2-hit KOing like almost everything in the format. It feels like
Mhm.
so. Yeah, it's awesome. The Amoongus is something that I don't think I haven't seen a lot of people doing, being like overly indexed in special defense. So that's actually like kind of interesting. Like I mean, it's just an Amoongus, but it's so good into rain and stuff. Like it feels really comfortable knowing that like I don't have to tear away from Pelipper hurricanes or anything like that. We just like take 70% from a hurricane or something. I think we can live a Terra Stellar hurricane or if it's like really close. And I'm always clicking Snarl in that matchup anyways, or parting shot. Um, and then Covert Cloak is just so strong. So many people's uh plans into Amoongus involve clicking Fake Out. And it's just like if you can just lead Amoongus and Pressure Spore turn 1, and there's not really anything they can do about it, it's really disruptive and hard for a lot of game plans to get around. And then also, it's just really good insurance against like I said, I'm bringing it into rain. I'm eating hurricanes a lot, and I never have to worry about getting confused. So redirecting all of the secondary effects is excellent. It's phenomenal for dealing with Sneasler. I've never ever felt like Sneasler is a problem with this team, just because I have Instant Amoongus Goldengo, and that's it. Just can't do anything. Um, I'm never worrying about Dire Claw procs. Yeah, Covert Cloak has been phenomenal. This Amoonguss is amazing. I wouldn't change any of the moves on it. I know a lot of people have been running like Sludge Bomb and stuff, and like it's fine. But I think, especially for how slow this team can be when it wants to be, uh, Pollen Puff is really important for those game plans where we're really like digging in and playing like the grindy balance mode.
Mhm.
Um, and Terrifier, uh, at one point was Terra Fairy when all of the Terra Dragon Dragonpult, or sorry, Terra Dragon Dragapult outrage stuff was going around, because I didn't really have a lot of stuff to do into the Sneasler Pult lead, and it like they could just click Terra Dragon Outrage and blow something up, and so Terra Fairy Amoonguss was great for that, but Terra Dragon Pult doesn't really exist anymore. And so we went back to Fire, which is just like a better overall typing. It's amazing for the side spam stuff. Um, Part of the like hard TR matchup can involve having to eat like a Terrifier Helping Hand Eruption in Sun from Torkoal, and Terrifier Moongus is like the only thing that does that. So yeah. Hydreigon, like we said earlier, the goggles is just like phenomenal. It makes it so that it's great into the sun stuff, the side spam stuff, rain, and then the EVs is just like we originally had max speed, but other Hydreigons don't really seem to exist that much, and so the only thing in between that and the next mon is, or the next mon down is Heatwave and Typhlosion, and so we're just running 1 point faster than Heatwave and Typhlosion. Um, I have enough special attack to 3-hit KO Pelipper with Snarl, and then the rest is to live a -1 close combat from Sneasler. It guaranteed does it if it's Jolly, and I think it's like slightly favored if it's Adamant. Um, and then it has the same defensive and special defensive base stats, and so we're 12 spit F just to respect P2 being able to lead it into that. Because Ensign and Hydreigon is like a pretty reasonable lead into a lot of the P2 Goldango balance teams, like into the mirror stuff.
Mhm.
And we're 4-4 for defense and spit F on the Ensign. And so I just wanted 1 extra point in special defense so that P2 would get the attack. This Incineroar set is a little out there just with the speed. We're really, really fast. This is it hits 109 speed, and there's not really anything like it's not for anything in particular. I mean, going faster than Blood Moon was really important, and then the other thing is we wanted to be faster than our own Goldengo, and there's a few interactions why that is really nice and important. One of them, it's great for Dragonite. You can like break multi-scale. It's really good for P2. You can knock off the EV light before you click Make It Rain. And then there's a lot of times where you can make the Make It Rain single target, which is just like such a big multiplier if you just like pick off something with Incin that's at low HP. And a lot of people don't expect that interaction, and it is super important. Otherwise, it's just like an offensive Incineroar. This guy's so good in the format. Citrus Berry is insane on it. It's so broken. And this guy can just do everything. Like, one of the things that you need to do with this team is be really intentional about how you want to use each of the pieces, because they're all so flexible. So if you can play Ensign like a big support piece and just click like fake out parting shot and just cycle intimidates and whatnot. But the other thing that like with how bouncy this team is and how slow it can be, Ensign is a really big part of your damage output, which is why we're adamant. And so like you just have to be really intentional with how you want to use it, because this guy can just do everything. So a lot of people are surprised by. I mean, I know Adamant's kind of the standard now at this point in this format, uh, but it puts out so much damage when you need it to, and it's just a great offensive tool piece. This guy can do literally everything.
Mhm.
Um, I'll go to Goldango because it kind of fits in with Ensign. This guy is just the most broken Pokemon in the format, I think. And that's the whole point of this team is being a Goldengo team. We've been running with Metal Coat for a while. I don't really like the way that Life Orb works with these balance cores. I think it really cuts into your overall bulk and it doesn't really mesh with the identity of the team. Like the extra damage on Shadow Balls are nice, but I don't really feel like it's necessary. Um, and so we've been running Metal Coat, and as a result, I don't feel like it's being played like most other Goldengos. Like I'm not fast at all. This thing is 107 speed. We were originally wanting to be just 1 point in between Instant and Goldengo, but just with the defensive calcs that I have on Goldengo, I couldn't get there. And I felt like the special attack stat was really important. And mostly I'm just really comfortable with the spread. I know what it lives. It's super bulky. Constantly people are surprised by what my Goldengo is living. And the fact that I don't have Life Orb just makes it that I can it has such a sustaining offensive presence. Like there's so many matchups where I can just like get to +2 and click make it rain until I'm at -4. And it doesn't really matter. All I need to do is like continuously output pressure, and you can never do that with the Life Orb Goldengo because you're just attacking too many times. So I think it allows you to play in a very unique way. And then the defensive Terra is just it's really nice for pairing with Garchomp. It's a pretty good defensive Terra into uh like Ursaluna teams. Yeah, overall I think it does the best for like allowing you to get around all of the offensive threats in the format for Goldengo, like especially paired with Amoonguss. Being able to click like Rage Powder, Terra Flying, Goldengo can just like avoid being touched from a lot of things that would normally threaten it, even if it's at like 1 HP. And there's a lot of situations where like you can pair a 1 HP Amoonguss, or sorry, a 1 HP Goldengo with Amoonguss, and it's just like that will close out the game because they can't touch it. And lastly, Garchomp. This is a bit of a unique set. I haven't really seen anyone else do Scale Shot with Garchomp. And it was an idea that uh, actually Marcus Dion suggested like a week or two before Sacramento. And I kind of dismissed it at first, and then it just sat in the back of my mind. And I was Life Orb for a while on Garchomp, and similarly to how I disliked the identity of Life Orb Goldengo, I felt like it just didn't fit the bulkiness of this team. And Garchomp really felt like it never came, and it just constantly was too frail. Like I just was like I'd live something at like 9 HP and then kill myself. And that sucked because it like could be such a sustaining presence. And so I kind of came about to Scale Shot as a way of like being able to like allowing myself to have more damage by running Adamant. And like you don't really care as much about going Jolly if you're running Scale Shot because you can get the speed boost if you need it. And yeah, it was so much better. I loved this Garchomp in this tournament specifically. It felt so strong into what I brought it. Like I didn't click Scale Shot that much. It's mostly clicking EQ and Stomping Tantrum. Um, but just like honestly, like not having an item was better than having Life Orb, I think, just for the ability to maintain its presence on the field and like force the opponent to deal with it. And then Scale Shot, like when I clicked it, it was good. Like I think I probably clicked it 9 times the whole tournament, and I think I missed 3 or 4, which is like not great, but it was still good. I think it was still the right item, or the right choice. Um, yeah, super solid. And then Terrifier is mostly for dealing with Volcarona stuff. Because Garchomp and Incin are like the 2 big answers into Volcarona teams. Yeah, I think I covered just about everything. I think maybe the one thing I didn't touch on was Hydreigon's Terra type. Um, I said it was originally poison. and we switched to Ghost. It's just like a super solid end game Terra type, like into the Ursaluna balance teams. Like Ursaluna literally can't touch you if you're like with Levitate and Terra Ghost. And so there's really unique ways that you can uh, navigate towards an end game, and you kind of can create alternate win cons for yourself, where maybe I have like a 2 HP Hydreigon, but I just get to win the game because their Ursaluna can't touch me.
Yeah.
Um, so yep, that's the team.
Yeah.
Do you have
And
any questions about specific choices that I maybe missed?
um let's see. I don't know about specific questions. I think that you explained everything really well. I think that I guess the cool part about this team, like you said, you hadn't really or it's very meta ignorant, right? I feel like a lot of the meta game
Yeah,
has been trying to go faster and faster and faster, and I especially like that it's entirely like opted out of that. You don't have to go max speed timid on your Goldengo to speed tie other Goldengo. You've got a Hydreigon, you've got
yeah,
an Incineroar, you got a
right.
Garchomp. Like who cares? Um, and so and just yeah, just by doing your own thing and by sort of like get it, you get a lot of stats that you otherwise wouldn't have. Same with like the Adamant Garchomp, right? You don't have
Yeah,
to speed tie opposing Garchomp because you have Scale Shot, and so now all of a sudden you get to this crazy amount of bulk and damage output back, and so especially. I think we've always like reached a tipping point where people have gone faster and faster and faster and faster, and now it's almost starting to revert where you either go the turbo Blood Moon stuff that of course won the regional, or you get to do what you
yep,
did and just go the entire opposite direction.
yeah. And that's really what this team is. It's just like I mean, that's part of what having Tail Room is all about, is like meeting in the middle with everything. Like we go slower than all the fast teams and faster than all the slow teams, and you just get to outstat stuff. And that's really what this team is doing, is you're just outstatting everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so with that, tell me about how to play the team. Did you have game plans that you had mapped out into specific archetypes that you expected to face, or did you look at team preview and kind of assess from there?
It's a bit of both. I one of the things that I like about this team is how flexible it is, and also how forgiving it is. Because this team has so many stats and every single mon is so good. Like you can win a end game with like basically any two mons on this team, like in a reverse like 2v4. Um, just because they're so solid. Like I have had many sets where I like completely got like turn one and into turn two just absolutely wrong. Felt enormously behind and was looking at it like, oh, there's no way I can win. But I have, I don't know, instant P2, and like those guys are so good that like sometimes they can just completely reverse sweep and still win out of just completely outrageous positions because their stats are so unreasonable. Um, so I like how flexible it is. I think I probably have led like almost every combination of mons on this team. Obviously, there's like the pretty standard ones. Like I think Ensign is, if when in doubt, just lead Ensign. Like that guy is insane. And Ensign P2, Ensign Goldango, and Ensign Hydreigon are like by far the most common leads. If you want to go into the Trick Room route, like Ensign P2 is really solid, and you don't even have to click Trick Room. You can just like lead Ensign P2 and start clicking damage. And I've won multiple games like that where I just led Ensign and Porygon 2 and just clicked attacking moves, and I never switched, and they just killed everything. Um, but also like yeah, just leading Ensign and Goldango, having this fast Ensign means that you're pretty much always getting the faster fake out, which is super important for a lot of game plans. And so just clicking like fake out, plot, parting shot, protect, tailwind, make it rain, and that's like the game for a lot of things. Um, yeah. So if we want to talk about like specific matchups, we can do that. Like I think into rain, a lot of the time I'm just leading Instant Hydreigon. And because Hydreigon is in a really good speed tier for going against pretty much everything on rain, you're always able to get Tailwind up, and you can like click stuff like Tailwind Parting Shot. You can just hard switch to Amogus and click Snarl. It kind of depends how, like, there's no like one way to play literally any matchup. And I think one of the things that I'm still working on with this team is being a little more flexible and able to adjust more.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of matchups that I still am like continuously figuring out. And one of the things that I have discussed with a lot of people with teams is if you play a team too much, you can get really rigid with it. Like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do into this matchup. And it can allow you to be like really inflexible and uh, just like not see new new potential avenues for approaching a set in an actual tournament where players are smart and adaptive and are able to figure out what you're doing. And so that's one of the things that I am working on. Um, so yeah, I really encourage who anyone who wants to use this team to just experiment with what you can do with the leads, because this team is really just such a sandbox for expressiveness in skill. Um, I really do think that like the core identity of balanced teams is having like a 45-55 to 50-50 matchup into basically every team. And there are some teams that some of the mons on here just like make it feel really favorable. But for the most part, like most matchups are pretty much even. And it's
Mhm.
just everything on here allows you to outplay the opponent. Like I have tools into every matchup, and um I have never seen a matchup where I go, yeah, that's unplayable. Um
Yeah.
Except for Mouse Ape. That is actually like a terrible matchup. I,
Well, I mean,
I yeah.
thankfully,
I
mouse ape is on the decline, so not something you have to worry
yeah,
about nearly as
it's a
much.
good true. It's a good spot for the team. Um and even that is still playable. It took a lot of practice. Um but pretty much everything else like you have tools into, and I've talked to people who I've practiced with and they have played a set and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is unwinnable." And then I'll just think about it for like a day or two and come back and be like, "Oh, actually I have like these tools into it." And um I truly think that this team is so strong, and it allows you to play into everything that can pretty much exist in this format. Yeah, it really is. The tools are so powerful. Um, I mostly believe that if I can't figure out what to do into a team, it's my fault and not the team's fault at this point. Like I'm not being creative enough with the tools that I have available to me.
Yeah, I mean, especially, I mean, like you said, you've got so many tools at your disposal, so many different modes that you can run, and then Pokemon like Porygon 2 and Amoonguss, you give them an inch and they take a mile, right? You get one
Yeah,
pollen puff off, and it's just all the value that your opponent has gotten has disintegrated, right? And so
right.
yeah, no, that's I like that approach. I like that style of play. I think it's always, like you said, very skill expressive, very rewarding. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I guess my one question here is you talked a lot about the Hydreigon. I think the P2 Amoonguss Ensign Goldie backbone of the team, really, from what I can tell. When do you bring the Garchomp? When do you feel like that mon comes the most?
It's for sure the least brought Mon. Um, but there's a lot of things that it's super strong into. Obviously, it's very good into Sneasler. This whole team is. It feels pretty essential for a lot of Gambit redirection teams, and teams with the EV light redirectors. So Electabuzz and Magmar. Garchomp is really good into that stuff. And then I also feel like it almost always has to come. Like there's an asterisk for everything, right? But generally, if there's a Volcarona, I want to be bringing the Garchomp as well. Um, Part of what Scale Shot can really help you do into the setup mons like Volcarona, and then also Komao is the other one that like have setup moves that increase their speed. Because Garchomp naturally outspeeds both of them, you can continuously just stay ahead of them and outpace them. Like obviously you don't like the Terra Fairy Volcaronas, you can't scale shot into them. But also sometimes you can because they might not Terra, and then you have pins with Goldengo and whatnot. But being able to click scale shot and stay ahead of them, and you have fake out to continuously allow yourself to get the speed boosts is really, really essential for those matchups. And it makes them feel like, rather than being slightly negative, I think it makes it feel slightly positive.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. And it's also, I didn't do it a lot, but it's really good into Dragonite, obviously, because you outspeed it and then kill it with your own scale shot through multi-scale. Um, yeah, Garchomp is definitely the piece that I probably am the least confident in how I use it. Um, it's a really strong guy, and Earthquake is a super good move. There's some games where you can just like get Tailwind and pair like position Goldengo as it terraflyings with Garchomp, and you just like spam the moves, and it's like, okay, that's the game, and that feels really good. Um, but otherwise, like Garchomp is just like half of the time I'm just using it to like switch in and break sashes. It's very threatening and it forces people to deal with it. So like it's not uncommon for me to use it and like get one attack off and it dies, and it was like that was a good job. That was enough. That was all it needed to do. Um
Okay.
yeah, I think that's probably so like I said, Gambit, Volcarona, and the EVL redirectors are like the big matchups that it comes to. But I really think it could come to more. And if you feel a little more comfortable in your usage of Garchomp, I think you could bring it to a lot of matchups. The scale shot set feels really strong, and I didn't get to like, especially if you're hitting your scale shots. I didn't hit a lot, but when it hits, it's such a crazy move. I get it. You know, I finally like put it on the team, and I was like, "Oh, I see what everyone's getting at. This is crazy."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Now I'm honestly a little surprised we haven't seen more scale shot Garchomp, given how like the Dragon Ground especially is like quite a strong pin. All things considered, it hits a lot of the format, and so yeah, I like it a lot. And I guess with that, let's talk about your tournament run. So you got all the way to top 8 at this tournament. Talk to
Yep.
me about some of the highlights of your tournament experience.
Sure. Honestly, I felt a little surprised that I made it out of day one. I had like 3 sets, I think, that were just down to the wire, like crazy, crazy close. My winning in was like probably the tightest set I've had in like this whole format. This was such an exciting set. The safety goggles King Gambit is really hard for this team, and then paired with the Volcarona, and then the pressure from Palafin on Garchomp. Like there's so much that falls on Garchomp in this matchup, and Palafin plus Rillaboom plus Pult are like all really threatening for Garchomp. Um, Specifically Palafin and Rillaboom, because of the priority spam into it and kind of the pin between Terrafire. But I also feel like I really need to bring Garchomp in this matchup to deal with the Volcarona and the Gambit. So there was a lot falling on like there was like too much responsibility on one piece to carry that matchup. And so I really I kind of had to play out of my mind. I got super rolled in game one, and then game 2 and 3 it was kind of the P2 show, and I just like managed to perfectly position everything barely. I The end game ended up being uh the end game of game 3 was a Palafin versus a Porygon 2 in like it I don't think it came down to damage rolls, but the I was like living the last jet punch before the Palafin died on like 9 HP or something. So it's super close and very like I finished day one and was like, oh my god, I'm exhausted. I don't know how I did that. Um, this was Allison's first tournament actually, and they played just phenomenally. They're going to be such a good player in the future. That it was such an immensely fun set. So yeah, super cool, really good Pokemon. Um, the other really notable matchup was in day 2 against Uncle Lewis Milich. Um, the Annihilate is pretty hard for Goldango balanced teams to deal with. Um, and especially when they have safety goggles. Luckily, there was no beat up. I think this matchup would have been like really, really, really negative if there was a beat up plus the Annihilate. They ended up Terra watering and self moon blasting to get extra Rage Fist damage. And like this was just also super positional. I think I ended up having to lead Amoongus Goldango as they were leading Annihilate Whimsicott, and just like trading damage between Goldango and Annihilate. And pieces were falling really fast. And the fake tears on Whimsicott ended up putting a ton of pressure for cleaning up everything with Ursaluna after all of the initial pressure and damage that Annihilate put out. And so it came down to a lot of calls, and I won game 3 off of a roll. My Porygon 2 lived a Blood Moon at -2 special defense from full HP on like 6 HP or something, and then KO'd the Ursaluna back with Terrifying Terra Blast. And we calced it afterwards, and it was like basically a 50-50 to kill because it's essentially super effective Blood Moon. So yeah, that was an insanely close set, and it was a really out there team that I hadn't played like that combination of mons before. I think this is really similar to the team that Tub built for the GC, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't practiced much into it, and it was really strong and scary. And winning this set, I was like, okay, I'm like locked in. I'm playing really well. I'm gonna cut this event like for sure. And then, yeah, the rest of the games, I felt like I was super locked in. My set versus Hunter was super close. He played really, really well. Similar kind of team. So there was a lot of Blood Moon and like Blood Moon Dragonite Sneasler teams that I dealt with throughout the event, and they were all playing super well. But I really think these kinds of matchups are pretty favored. This is another like all of these teams are playing like some form of like a little bit more hyper offense than my team is, and so my team just kind of has to dig in and like take a bunch of damage and outlast a little bit. And uh, I think that the Amoongus and the Porygon 2 are really, really, really strong into these kinds of teams. And yeah, I think I won this game. Like there was a lot of getting lucky too in this event, right? Like I won this game, or I won the set because uh his Incineroar in game 3 had its safety goggles knocked off, and it took a spore. And if he had gotten a 1-turn wake, he would have won, and he didn't, and so that was the set. So yeah, I had a lot go my way for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
but
that's kind of the nature of Amoongus Mirrors, right? Is sleep turns are
yeah,
going to come up. So
yeah, it was actually interesting. I think neither of us brought Amoongus in the first 2 games, and then game 3 we both adjusted to Amoongus, and then like that whole last game was just like us clicking knockoff and spore into everything, and we were just like, okay, this is the game that this is gonna be. All right, lock in. Yeah, and it ended up coming up my way. But yeah, the team felt super strong. There were a lot of matchups that felt just like really, really positive. The Psy Spam Sun stuff felt really good. Like there's a few teams that I just felt like barely had a matchup into me. My We can talk about my losses really quick. It was nothing special. They were very like the 2 losses in day 1 were very normal teams, pretty much playing like Instant Amoongus mirrors, and they just outplayed me. They played really well. They both did really well. Chase also ended up cutting. He's just playing a completely generic rain team play, and he played phenomenally. Uh, so yeah, there's not much to say about that. I kind of got bodied,
Mhm.
um, and I definitely did not want to play him in day two. Because as much as I had practiced the rain matchup, this is one that I felt like I was, like I said, playing inflexibly, where I was like, "This is what I do into rain," and he just was like, not gonna let me do that game plan. And so, if I was going to play him in day two, I would have had to figure something out and adjust because, uh, yeah, he played phenomenally. I think this was one of his first big breakout events,
Mhm.
so that was really cool to see. Super phenomenal player
Yeah.
and really nice guy.
I'm not gonna lie. This is the set where I was looking at your schedule and I was like, huh, this is supposed to be the Goggles High Dragon game, and you
Yeah,
lost.
yeah, this is supposed to be the Goggles Hydreigon game. Um, getting pinned, specifically having the ensign on this team, the way he played it and positioned it, um, made it so that like I had to Terra Ghost in a lot of positions, and then uh, ensign can just do a ton of work into the rest of the team
Mhm.
after I Terra. Um, and so yeah, s- the original Terra type, I think Terra Poison would have been a lot better into this specific team. Um, but like, yeah, it's whatever. This is something that like could use work on in terms of the matchups, especially like if played really really well. I think that Porygon 2 probably needs to come, and that's something that I haven't really been doing. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, and like you said, it's a very fair team, right? So you're playing when you're playing it's in Shroom Goldie mirrors, right? You're playing
yep,
playing it's fair Pokemon, and it really is skill expressive. So,
yeah, yeah, and I really did just get outplayed. So
mhm.
yeah, nothing there. I don't think it was a team issue. It was mostly a play issue. And then if you want, we can talk about my top eight set. You can watch
Yeah.
that on stream. I got super bodied by Marcus. Uh, he's one of my very good friends, and so it was a lot of fun to play him on stream. I think game one I made really close, and there was a bit of unluck with a couple crits. Um, and but I think I could have played better. And then game two, I set up Trick Room, and I shouldn't have, and just kind of lost the game on the spot. This team is really oppressive and does not let you make a single mistake. You really have to play extremely cautiously and like very precisely. And so this is something like I don't think it's a negative matchup at all. Um, it's even, or honestly, I'd even say kind of positive. I think the Hydreigon is so good into this team. Um, it without the Electabuzz, like these types of teams that didn't have the Electabuzz on it before are like extremely positive. The Electabuzz is the thing that swings it. Um, just having the fast taunt and Electro Web and Vital Spirit makes it really hard to position the rest of the team. And yeah, the Electabuzz Ursaluna combination is pretty tough to deal with. But I really think it's very playable, and it's just something that I didn't think about enough going into because we were just hanging out and talking. Because he's a good friend of mine. So yeah, I probably didn't take it as seriously as I could have, especially if it was a different opponent.
Mhm.
But I mean, obviously, no excuses. Marcus played really really cleanly. Um, and yeah, kind of dunked on me in especially that second game. So
Yeah.
yeah, all props to him. This team's super cool, and he and Carson uh, cooked pretty hard. They had some really cool spreads, and like I think they pushed this archetype to the extent that it could go. And I mean, they clearly showed they were the two guys that brought this team, and they got top four in first place. So yeah, awesome team, and it was a ton of fun to play up there.
Yeah, yeah, and this is a team that I think, if you haven't practiced against it, if you don't like know your lines really well into it, like you said, one misplay,
Yeah.
it's gonna punish you so heavily. And so,
Oh yeah.
I think moving forward, especially, you're gonna have to practice against it. You're gonna have to play some games against it and know your lines
Yeah.
because I think you're right. I think you do have a lot of tools into it. It's just a question of using them pretty perfectly.
Yeah. It's definitely not a negative matchup at all. You just have to be perfect.
Mhm. All right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was a great overview of the team, a great explanation of the team. I definitely recommend that you try it out. And as per usual, the rental code is on screen right now, and the paste will be in the description down below. Thank you, Caelan, for coming on the channel and explaining it and sharing your team. I really appreciate it. Did you have any final words or shoutouts that you wanted to give?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely try out the team, and if you have any questions about it or want to know anything in particular that I didn't cover, you feel free to DM me on Twitter. I'm sure Audie will link my Twitter down below.
Mm-hmm.
And for shout outs, obviously, big shout out to my building partner, Scott Iwafuchi, who I couldn't have done this without. And then shout outs to all of the people that helped me prep and run sets and testing, uh, Ian, Sean, Kevin, Carl, P2 crew. Uh, if you helped me and I didn't shout you out, I really appreciate it, all of it. You know who you are. And then most importantly, my partner Cassie, who has been like f- so helpful in helping me work on my mentality with this game, because that's something that I have been struggling with uh, while at events, staying level headed and being composed. And I really think that without her help, I wouldn't have been able to make the progress that I have been making. And I really feel like I've come a long way, and I'm feeling really strong this season. And I definitely couldn't have done it without her help. So, yep, that's all of my shout outs. Thank you so much for having me, Audie. This has been fun. Yeah.
Of course, anytime. And congratulations once again on your top eight. Your back-to-back top eights at NorCal Regionals. That's your place. Uh,
Sure. Yeah.
and yeah, thank you all for watching. And until next time, I will see you all later.